This is one of those seasons where I'm simultaneously working on several large long-term projects, kind of like this one but not quite as big. I'll share much more about that in this video, but I really got to get the ball rolling, especially on this one. And instead of doing a dedicated project for this week's video, I've decided to dial things back a little bit so I can focus on some of these things and finally start to get ahead. That's enough of an intro though. I'm going to start over here at Samson's rack. Right below his tank, I've got the 75 gallon that used to be the Suriname toad enclosure before I moved them over into their 110 tall. Now the plans that I have for this tank are incredible, but getting it set up is, well, easier said than done. Give me a second. In order to bring my vision to life, I have to find a way to somehow get this giant piece of driftwood into this tank. If you recall, this is the same piece of driftwood that I hand selected at SR Aquaristic. My apprentice and I put this in a riparian style environment at Aquascapes last year. Speaking of which, we're both going to be there next month and hope to see some of you there. And like most things on this channel, that's of course easier said than done. Unfortunately, we cannot go through the front here because there's just not enough clearance, so I actually have to pull the entire rack away from the wall. I can't just go and do that though. I actually have to drain Samson's tank first. Now it kind of lines up perfectly though because I had to do maintenance in here anyway, so I can just do them both at the same time. And for Samson's well-being, I'm actually going to take him out of the tank while all of this is going on. This is definitely not one of my favorite things to do. Allow me to elaborate on that. The reason I say I don't enjoy this is because I'm not trying to get bit. African bullfrogs have a tooth-like bone on their bottom jaw, known as an odontoid. This allows them to hook onto prey or anything else that they may latch onto. That very well could be your hand if you're not careful, and trust me, it's not something you want to get bit by. Samson bit me about 5 years ago when he was pretty small. Even then, he did serious damage, so I could only imagine what he could do these days at least 5 times that size. All of that said, he's actually quite docile once I actually get a hold on him, as you'll see here. Every time I bring him out of the tank, I'm always reminded by how big he is. I mean, you see him in the tank and it just doesn't get it across. And a lot of you often ask, why do I wear gloves when I'm handling him? And it has nothing to do with me, it's for his own protection. Frogs absorb everything through their skin, and so if you have any sort of soaps or anything like that on your hands, they can absorb it and it can be harmful to them. So whenever you're handling your frogs, best practice to wear some gloves. I went ahead and got it all cleaned already. Now, although I do this pretty regularly, every now and again I gotta do a deep clean and really get behind the hardscape here in different areas like that where debris likes to settle. I also rearranged the scape a little bit to give him some more room in the back, which is where he usually hangs out. With that addressed, I can finally pull this out. Wish me luck. This process takes a little while, but I've done it a number of times by now. It's fairly simple. I just have to shimmy it out little by little so I can access the back. Once I did this time, I tried to get the wood in place. It didn't work though. Unfortunately, I just couldn't get a good angle. So what I did was extend the back of the stand, which allowed me to slide the tank out. I thought at this point I could finally get it to work, but no. I really didn't want to, but I wound up having to cut the brace out of the frame. I can easily fix this later on, so it's not really a big deal, more of an inconvenience. At long last, I was finally able to make it happen. After all of that, I pushed the stand back, and here we are now. As I'm sure you could tell, it was really quite the process, but I absolutely love how it looks. Even now, I can see my vision unfolding, and I can't wait to share it with you all. I'm not exactly sure when that will happen, because there's still a lot of work that has to go into it, but that's for another time. My man over there is tired of being in timeout though, so why don't we get him back in his tank? I filled it up and plopped him into his preferred location. Since he was a good boy and waited patiently for me, I think we should give him some food. If you're squeamish or anything like that, just skip ahead to the time shown on screen. I feed Sam a variety of different foods, and on today's menu are 2 frozen thawed mice. You can't truly get a sense of this through the camera, but despite how he looks, he's a powerful animal. I know I did that fun feeding video sometime last year to showcase his abilities. As I'm sure you can see here though, he's much more effective in his natural element. Enough on that though. Another thing that I need to address as far as feeding animals go are my fish. More specifically setups that include duckweed, like the riparian Guppy pond. You can't tell by looking at it, but there's a vast colony of fish that call this setup home. When feeding it, I typically just brush the plants aside to gain access, but that gets kind of annoying. In recent days, I've switched over to using portals, like the one I shared in a recent Instagram reel. A question a lot of you asked about it was, where can you get one? Although you can buy them pre-made online, I think they're way overpriced for what you get. Luckily, they're super easy and cheap to make. To make mine, I used airline tubing and airline connection pieces. The more flexible the tubing, the better. I got 25 feet for $8.99 and a bag of various connectors for $5.99. The airline actually came with connectors as well, so I didn't even need to buy the extras. Not only that, but each portal will only use a fraction of these materials, so they'll only cost cents to make. As I said before, they're really easy to create as well. Literally, all you need is a length of tubing and a connector. Combine the pieces together like so, and you have yourself a fish portal. You'll notice though that it doesn't make a perfect circle. The easiest way around that is to just trim the connector. This leaves you with a nearly perfect circle. In addition to that, the items I bought came with suction cups and other connector styles that you could use to modify the piece to make whatever you want. All we need to do now is drop this thing into the enclosure and clear away the excess duckweed. The easiest way to do that is probably with a spoon. Now you can truly get a sense of how many fish are in this setup. I noticed something while editing this clip that I thought would be good to point out. Here you can get a really good view of the philodendron's roots. I point this out because many of you have questioned how a no-filter setup like this one functions so well. These roots and the plants they're attached to are the reason why. Terrestrial riparian plant growth, like this, is especially efficient at filtering the water. They act like a sponge and absorb all of the excess nutrients in the water column. So much so that I have to frequently fertilize the system or I end up with discolored leaves like this. What I'm trying to say is that the plants are so effective at filtering this system that they've already pulled all of the nutrients out of the water, and unless I fertilize for it, deficiencies are going to show. Now this means that the water conditions are virtually pristine for the fish, and that's a good thing. Back to what I was saying earlier though. Let's give them some food. I'm glad that I finally switched over to these because they're making my life simpler. I can also appreciate the fish more, which is a huge part of why I do all of this. Additionally, I've included portals on the Blackwater Tetra tank and the Bonsai Tree Paludarium. By the way, this setup is doing exceptionally well. I had high hopes for it in the beginning and I couldn't be happier with its progress. The moss is growing in extremely well, the trees are getting new leaves on them, and the root systems have really started to develop. One of the things I'm most excited about with this is the tree growth. Obviously that means they're doing well. It also means that soon enough, I'll be able to shape them into more intriguing designs by wiring the branches. Oh yeah, let's not forget about the Emerald Iris Bora. They've really become more accustomed to their new environment and are far less shy than they were before. They also learned that the portal is where food comes from and like to school under it. In fact, that's what happened with all of these setups. Literally within days, these fish have learned that the portal equals food. And I don't know about you, but I find that pretty fascinating. As I said earlier in the video, I also really need to get moving on this one. Now it's been a long time coming. There was a lot of behind the scenes work that I had to do to be able to get this ready for what I want to do for it, and I'm just about done with all of that. Without giving too much away, I've got the plumbing taken care of from the custom built sump up to the tank fittings. I'll have to connect it all together at a later time, but one of the things that I've really been dragging my feet on is the background. The reason I say that is that I have a very specific idea of how I want this to look in my head, and it's just a time-consuming process to do. I've got at least some of the base taken care of, but my hope is to get it completed within the next couple of days. As I'm sure you'd expect, I'll have a full tutorial on this as well as the 75 gallon that I showed earlier in the video. If you're curious to see what I'm going to be doing with these, and trust me, you're not going to want to miss it, they're both really incredible and unique setups, definitely stick around. And unfortunately, I gotta end things there, my friends. As you can see, and as I detailed in the video, I'm working on a lot of stuff right now. These two enclosures, as well as many others I didn't discuss on camera just yet, but they're all sort of intensive projects, things that I can't do in a short amount of time, and I cannot wait to share them with you. Big plans for this one, big plans for that one, and as I said, a few others going on behind the scenes as well. But we're gonna end it there so I can get to work on these things. I'll hang out with Dean here for a little bit, give him some quality time, and yeah, that's all I got for you in this one, Serpa Squad. As always, thanks for tuning in. I hope you enjoyed the video and learned something new. And let me know, are you gonna make yourself a fish portal? I'm really enjoying them. If you're keeping duckweed or other floating plants, highly recommended. Until next time, Serpa Squad, take care and peace.